What if the pain you feel isn't just your own? So many women sense this invisible barrier of self-doubt, shame, or scarcity that seems to echo through generations. But what if those ancestral wounds are not here to punish you or here as karma, but they're actually here to empower you? In this video, I'm going to show you a feminine, grounded way of recognizing these ancestral patterns and wounds so you can heal them and finally claim the power, pleasure, and freedom that are your birthright. This is not about bypassing your pain or fixing yourself. It's about understanding exactly where your deepest voltage really comes from. My name is Silvana. I'm a modern Tantra teacher, PhD candidate on ancestral healing, and the founder of the Venusian Academy. I help women from all walks of life transform their wounds into power. So let's begin by first understanding the truth about ancestral wounds and why you feel the way that you do. Ancestral wounds, in its simplest forms, are energetic and emotional patterns that get passed down through your lineage. These are not just stories, they are living currents that are present in your body and in your psyche. We have things like the mother wound, which affects self-worth, emotional capacity, receptivity, abundance. And we have the father wound that affects identity, inner drive, boundaries. And of course, the repeating ancestral stories that have shaped your personality and your life. Most women are taught that these wounds are flaws that are meant to be hidden or overcome or fixed. And even though we do have to break chains of repeating cycles of abuse, it's very important to understand that these wounds are the very source of your feminine voltage, which translates to your unique power, magnetism, and capacity for creation. We have to understand that the wound, it's a place of suffering. It's a place of disconnection and forgetting from the truth of what we truly are. And whenever we descend into these wounds, not shame them and attack them or demonize them, but embrace them as part of our ancestral story, this is the breeding ground for true, deep feminine compassion. This is the birthplace of feminine wisdom. This is why I say that whenever you explore your wounds, and if you have a lot of ancestral wounds, you have a well of unlimited power available to you. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots have reached hell. So if in your ancestral lineage, there's a lot of wounds and unfelt emotions that reach all the way down to hell, if you go and reclaim that and feel it and heal it through yourself, through your body, your life is going to manifest in the opposite direction. So even though each family has their own stories and each lineage has some things that it struggles with, there are some wounds that are universal to all of us. One of the most important ones is the mother wound. Why is it so important? Because this affects self-worth and receptivity. The mother wound is that ache and pain of not being enough. It's the urge to overgive. And it's also the struggle of receiving love and nourishment. It shows up as deprivation, as shame around your desires, or belief systems that demonize pleasure as something that is either selfish or very dangerous altogether, especially if there is a religious programming there. And whenever you recognize this wound in yourself, you actually begin to see how it affects not only your emotional world and your relationships, but it also affects your abundance, ability to attract money, your beauty, and your own support system. This is the importance of addressing this wound. And also you might think like, oh, I don't have a mother wound, but if you're having a lot of money problems or problems with receiving wealth and abundance and attracting and magnetism, or don't feel beautiful enough, then this might be a good indication that there might be a mother wound. And it's not always conscious, especially because there is different degrees of mother wounds. We have the very obvious ones, and then we have some subtle ones that go through generations, almost hidden, but the pain is there and it's felt. The next wound that we collectively have is the father wound, and this affects identity, boundaries, and inner stillness. So the father wound is about how you relate to your own sense of authority, how you relate to your boundaries and your identity. This can show up as a difficulty to say no, feeling unanchored, or struggling to trust your own direction. It can also be perceived whenever we lose our identities in a relationship or with a group of people or with a community. In astrology, our sense of identity is the sun, and the sun is the king of the zodiac. It rules Leo, which is also associated with the king, which is also the heart and the inner child. So a personality or a type of being that gets really easily lost, especially in community, is being absorbed by lunar forces. This is the importance of having a healthy sense of ego. And I know a lot of spiritual advice out there says the opposite, says you need to eliminate your ego or transcend it or whatever. But in order to be able to fully individuate and explore who you really are, you do have to have a healthy sense of identity. If it's too much, that's gonna become a problem. But the opposite is true. If you don't have enough of a sense of identity, that's also going to become a problem, not only for you, from the people around you as well. This wound can oftentimes also manifest as like a sense of restlessness, lack of direction, or just feeling like you're not allowed to take up space or to project energy or to claim or go after your desires. So if you have a deep longing, but you get stuck in this freeze mode of not being able to, and you find a million different things to do before you do the one thing that you actually want to do, this is an indication of also struggling with an ancestral father wound. So why do these stories repeat itself cycle after cycle? The important thing to understand about this is that every family repeats whenever something has not been processed and addressed. Energy cannot either be created or destroyed. It can just transfer sources. So if there is all of these wounds that were not addressed, they keep being passed down unconsciously, you have the great opportunity of breaking that pattern. And not only that, it's not about breaking a pattern and then just like being like, oh, I won the battle, I'm gonna move on. It's about addressing the wound and extracting the raw power that comes from that emotion. It's a harvest, a spiritual harvest that comes from your lineage whenever you do end these very long cycles that get passed down generation after generation. So I want to invite you to ask yourself right now, what triggers me the most in my family? What is the one thing I see in them that just drives me crazy? Because that is going to help you identify maybe the first doorway to enter into this type of work. Another really good question is asking yourself, which patterns feel completely out of alignment with who I want to become? The actual power and the healing element here is simply noticing and bringing presence into these things that you notice. That's it. I know that every time that I've taught classes and I talk about like how presence is the thing that heals, I see some disappointment. It's almost like, really? That's it? Like, you know, like I thought this was more complicated. And the thing is like, that is the simplest thing, but it's also the hardest thing to do. That's why we have to almost like massage our brains into giving us access into these stories and parts of the self, because it is designed to protect itself from the very emotions that you are trying to access. So whenever you do, through self-inquiry or through journaling or through coaching or through whatever tool that you use, it's very important to bring in your undivided awareness and presence into that emotion, into that feeling, because that is what's going to create the healing movement altogether. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to have a ritual and a shaman and a thing and go drink everything. You simply have to go there and feel the thing, be able to become present with it. But in order to do that, in order to break the patterns, you first have to see them. And we function on autopilot most of the time. So that's why we have to constantly be wondering and asking these questions. Where is this coming from? Why is this triggering for me? This isn't so that that you just absorb everything as your own and you're like, oh, I'm the problem. This is more a tool for you to explore yourself. I am very careful with the whole notion of, well, if such and such trigger you, then what in you got triggered? Because that has been used in such a toxic and destructive way. And at the beginning of my journey in this work and understanding ancestral healing, I realized that there was nothing that offended me the most than whenever I expressed a boundary or something that wasn't okay with me, whenever people kind of launch that back into like, well, you're the one that's triggered, so you must be the problem, right? So I wanted to make that distinction because I really don't want this to come across in this way. That's why I say this is a tool for you, and nobody needs to know about this unless you do have a therapist or somebody that you trust, a professional that supports you in these type of processes. That is a qualified professional to guide you through this, okay? But if you don't have that, then these are good self-inquiry questions that we can ask to go into these very difficult and stuck places. But if we go through them, we're going to be able to access these ancestral wounds. And whenever we heal an ancestral wound, think of it as like healing the root of something, and then the whole tree comes back to life. That's the power of ancestral work versus just maybe healing from like the one thing that happened last week without really addressing the energy that comes behind that. So let's do a quick recap, midpoint check-in. We understand that there are some foundational archetypical wounds that all of humanity has. We have to look at those. Then there comes the stories in our lineage, and then we can go through them by self-inquiry and asking ourselves those questions, noticing the patterns that repeat and noticing how we feel about them. Now, we have to go through this work and then untap all of the power and potential. How do we do that? Well, there is many ways of doing that, but I found like a little point that really helps women break through this and unleash this power with ease, grace, and also a little bit of fun in the process. And that is working with Lilith, because Lilith is the unclaimed feminine part of our psyche. In evolutionary astrology, Lilith represents the part of the feminine lineage that was exiled, silenced, or demonized. She's gonna point to the secrets, the powers, and the unspoken truths that were never really allowed to exist in the family openly, but that were definitely there. By looking exactly at what was hidden or shamed in all of the women in your lineage, you actually begin to claim your own wildness, which leads you into your most authentic self and ignites your creative fire. So I advise you to grab your birth chart. There's many tools to do that, and look at what sign and house Lilith lands in, and then just go on a binge on Google and ChatGPT and YouTube and learn about it as much as you can, because you're going to discover very powerful things about the woman in your lineage by observing this specific point in the birth chart. The good thing is that you don't need to know the exact time of birth to at least get the sign in which Lilith is in your birth chart. The next point, access point, that is going to give you a tool in order to heal these ancestral wounds is going to be Chiron. Chiron is about the human wound, the wound of coming into this world, of existing. Chiron in evolutionary astrology is the wound that you're gonna carry throughout your entire life. It's usually triggered in childhood, but it's actually something that reflects the shadow of your entire lineage. Whenever you understand your Chiron and where it's placed in your chart and its sign, it's gonna help you see the specific flavor of the wound that you carry. And once you see it, you're gonna be able to use that to alchemize all of this pain into raw power. You will also understand why certain emotions or situations feel particularly triggering for you. So studying our own Chiron, it's opening a door not only to the wound, but also the power behind of the wound, because when we see the wound, the medicine is in itself. Chiron is the wounded healer, and even though he was wounded, he had the medicinal elixir. We have to also remember that we are human beings, and to be a human being is to have sexual centers, emotional centers, and mental centers that are very strong. These are like 3 points in our system that have their own agenda. Our sexual centers are going downward and into the material world. Our emotional centers are interrelational. And then our spiritual and mental centers are about ascension and ideas and air energy. Whenever we start learning about our own chart and about these points, and we understand something, it creates safety. Like the mind thinks, okay, because I understand it, I know it, therefore it's safer, because known is safe, unknown is unsafe. We allow ourselves to step a little bit closer to these wounds. If we don't use these tools, it can feel like it's just too much for your system. So that's the beautiful thing of evolutionary astrology, that is not just giving you a thing that says this is who you are, it's giving you tools in order for you to discover yourself, discover your lineage, and be able to use all of this information to create safety so that you can go in and do this deep inner work. So after you're done with all this digging, this is the feminine art of alchemy, which is you're gonna feel it all. Even though we are taught to numb and suppress and not feel our emotions, we do have a unique opportunity right now to really feel whatever our ancestors were not allowed to feel. True transformation happens whenever we let all of these emotions be witnessed and be felt. And you can feel grief, rage, longing, everything, because you have to think that especially the women in our lineage, they did not have the freedoms that we have today. So in order to survive, there are some things that you just have to suppress. You're not even gonna go there. And if you are a woman that's on a spiritual journey and you're trying to understand yourself at a deeper level, most likely you have a lot more space than they did, which gives you a great opportunity to bring in this energy because you have more capacity to hold it. We have more tools, we have more understanding, we have support systems. Like, even though yes, things are going terrible in one direction, on the other hand is that we have these spaces, you know, like you can go on YouTube and hear about this from some random person on the internet, and they didn't have that before. They were stuck in their own worlds and emotion. So this takes me to my next point, which is the importance of honoring the ancestors. And I want to make a little asterisk here because I want to bring in the concept of the healed ancestors, the ones that bring forth discernment and devotion. These are two masculine and feminine principles that can also activate in lineages, but doing ancestral work, especially if you come from communities that were suppressed, people of color, or you have like imperialistic stories or stories of colonization, racial discrepancy, discrimination, all of that, or you come from the global south, there's like an extra element of wounding that comes with that. This is why whenever we do ancestral work, it's very important to call in and invite the healed ancestors to be with us, to support us and to hold us, so we can start moving all of the ancestral energy that hasn't been addressed. Healing the lineage is not about romanticizing the past or carrying everyone's burdens. And there are some people in our lineage that were not so great, and that's okay. You don't have to carry that. But what you do have to do is discerning which of the ancestral energies that run through your family are here to support your freedom and your evolution, and which are meant to be offered to Mother Earth to be recycled and transmuted into something else. Whenever you relate to your ancestors from a place of wholeness, you'll be able to liberate the lineage and feel deeply connected to your line. Even if your relationship with your immediate family is not great, this is a spiritual work that you're doing with the root of it all. So what do you do after you have done all of this and explore all of these emotions and you feel a sense of power? Once you start this process of going into the wounds and learning to alchemize all of this pain into raw energy, neutral energy that's there for the creation of your life, then you become a high voltage woman. The high voltage woman is the woman that lives as herself without apologizing. She fills every space with vitality, with life force. Her presence is electric, inspiring, transformative, and magnetic. Inside my High Voltage Woman program, I walk you through the process of Venusian Tantra, which is the combination between Shakta Tantra, evolutionary astrology, shamanism, and Jungian psychology to help your 4 energetic centers come into alignment, to be able to guide you through a process that gives you a framework to continue doing this for the rest of your life. We are emotional beings, and life is going to trigger us, obviously, and if we learn how to use every trigger and every emotion to build and create and expand our capacity to feel and experience life, collectively, we're gonna get the power to truly change the world, to initiate movements, to rise up into leadership. This is the first time in history that we as women can actually become leaders of the heart, leaders of freedom, new ways of being. I know so many women that are living their dream life because they work hard for it, but they also did a lot of inner work that allowed them to create a life that feels spacious for them, that has freedom, that has power. And whenever you have power in yourself, energetic power, then you'll get influential power, social power, monetary power, and that allows you to move energy outwardly, to take action, to decide, to participate in something that women were not able to participate before. So when you do this ancestral work, which starts by simply awareness and curiosity and openness, and ends by having the willingness of feel and bring presence into your own ancestral history, you'll be able to experience for the very first time in your life true freedom of being, freedom of your essence, and you have enough space to really get to know yourself. And that is the biggest and greatest pleasure in life. If you would like to dive a little bit deeper into this work, I have some free resources in the description box below. So make sure you check those out and leave me a comment. Let me know which ancestral pattern are you currently already transmuting in your life or are ready to transform, and share what parts have you already conquered. What are some of the wounds that ended with you and you know are not gonna continue in your lineage? That's it from me today. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.